Hello and welcome once again to Davos Storm, our continuing coverage on India Today and Business Today TV of all that's been happening at the World Economic Forum. It's the last day and we thought this would be a good time to do an overview with leading journalists and those who've been tracking the media from different parts of the world. Joining us, therefore, we're very privileged to be joined by Jamil Anderlini. He's Regional Director with Politico Europe. Was formerly their editor-in-chief, so he's made the transition from editorial to the business world. And Jaime Ho joins us from the Straits Times in Singapore. Good to have both of you on this chilly morning here in Davos. Just to get a sense, if you look back at the last 4 days and all that we've seen, particularly geopolitically, and this battle between Europe and America playing out virtually in real time, what's your sense? How do you see it, particularly from a European perspective, Jamil?
Yeah, so thank you, Rajdeep. It's great to be here, and hello to everyone in India and around the world. I would say that Europe this week, and Davos in particular, got a taste of what it's like to be in the Trump show. This, to me, this Davos was probably the most symbolic, the most consequential of the 55, 56 years that this conference has been going on for. And the reason I say that is the symbolism of a United States president coming to Davos, coming to speak to the leaders of Europe, and rather than talk about peace or economic development or the strength of the transatlantic relationship, he demanded that they cede Greenland to him. And the symbolism to me it can't be understated. I feel like what we're seeing today and what this Davos really signifies is the end of the multilateral world order as we've known it since the end of World War II, but particularly since the fall of the Soviet Union.
So the ruptures that Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, spoke about are real and they're going to probably last a while longer.
I'm based in Brussels and Politico is headquartered out of Washington, D.C. and every day I'm witnessing this rupture playing out in real time. And my personal opinion is that this is not, many people want to lay that at the feet of Donald Trump. In my opinion, Donald Trump is a symptom, not the cause of this rupture that we're seeing. It's this moment in history. The great forces of history are coming together. Rise of China, other countries, these authoritarian versus democratic blocs forming, and the end of globalization. I think this is all coming together, coming to a head, and Donald Trump to me is a symbol, is a symptom, not necessarily the cause.
Jamil, being in the heart of Europe in a way, is seeing it playing out in real time. In Singapore itself, does it seem a very distant battle? Are there, or is it something that is affecting every part of the world, Jamie?
It's not distant at all. Especially in Singapore and in Asia, are so much part of this global order that we used to know, the multilateral order that we used to know, the rules of the game that we used to know. And as Jamil said, I think that the thing about what's happened over the last couple of days in Davos, maybe not one rupture, but maybe the start of several ruptures and the process of realignment, of a reforming of what this new order is going to be. Yes, again, the Trump show is always going to be the Trump show. We all sort of watched with some degree of trepidation what was going to happen before he came. There was a lot of chatter about that. And then we had Prime Minister Carney and we had Ursula von der Leyen making very strong comments before he came. And we were all wondering how he was going to react to that, how he's going to deal with the issue of Greenland. Yes, he's dealt with it, but then I think there's still many unanswered questions, and we'll see in the next, it's not just the next few weeks, but the next years to come, where we eventually land in terms of a sort of working new world order.
No, the reason I asked you about in terms of geography, because Singapore is firmly located in East Asia, and here you've got the battles playing out in between Europe and America primarily, of course affecting the rest of the world. Does geography in a way give us, even in India, a sense of security, the illusion of stability as it's called? No?
I think if we ever saw that as any form of stability or isolation, I think we would be quite wrong, because everything that happens there will have some degree of impact on us, and especially Asia, especially Singapore. there's no other options for countries like Singapore. So we are firmly watching what's happening. The rules are something that we were born into as an independent country. The countries of Asia were born into a system in terms of the last 50 years, in terms of the systems that existed. So yeah, I don't think there's any degree of isolation or ability to live separate from those rules.
Has it been a wake-up call for Europe in particular? I heard the Ukrainian President Zelensky, he was also asking Europe to do much more today rather than think about what happens tomorrow. Forget about Greenland, there's a real war at the moment going on, thousands of people being killed in the Ukraine-Russian war. And you've got the President of Ukraine saying, look, Europe needs to do much more at the moment. So has all of what has happened in the last 12 months in particular been a wake-up call for Europe, that Europe in a way needs to stand up not just to Trump, but stand up for an ally in Ukraine as well?
I think that's absolutely true. What Europe has faced over the last year is a series of wake-ups. What we heard from Zelensky was quite astonishing in many ways. He's basically saying to Europe, and I happen to agree with him, that it's time for Europe to look after its own defense. It is quite astonishing when you think about it that Europe collectively has 10 times the economic power of Russia. It has more than 3 times roughly 3 times the population of Russia, and it has to rely on the United States effectively for its defense. That is quite an astonishing situation. But the reality is, since the end of World War II, Europe has effectively, to a large degree, and especially since the fall of the end of the Cold War, the fall of the Soviet Union, has effectively outsourced its defense to America. That's unsustainable. People have realized that over the last year. You're seeing defense spending rise very rapidly in Europe, but not rapidly enough. Not rapidly enough to defend Ukraine and the rest of Europe. If America was to fully remove itself from NATO, remove itself from the defense of the continent, Europe would be highly exposed. Now, I've lived in Brussels now the last 4 years or so. I used to live in Asia, actually. And it's very interesting for me to compare and to see the contrast between the different systems. In Europe, when you look at the European Union in particular, it's effectively a crisis machine. It doesn't really work very well or very fast until a crisis happens. And then you can see things start to move. And in my opinion, my analysis, this is the most serious crisis the European Union has ever faced. Donald Trump represents the most serious crisis, a basic undercutting of the whole base, the whole foundation of what the European Union is meant to do. And my argument to senior leaders in the European Union has been like, maybe this is the moment that the crisis galvanizes you into action. And one very senior official, I won't name them, but told me, yes, when the patient is laid out on the table, sometimes it needs electric shock treatment, and that's what we're getting from Donald Trump. Unfortunately, sometimes if the charge and the voltage is too high, the patient doesn't survive the electric shock, and that's the fear that many people have.
So will the patient survive? Will Europe survive the possibility of let's say America choosing tomorrow, it's hypothetical, to pull out of NATO or in some way dilute its commitment to NATO? Do you really see that happening? Or do you believe eventually America will recognize that post-World War II alliance has to sustain for much longer?
I think that in some form the transatlantic alliance will survive, because the values of the societies, the values of these as democracies, I think they are so aligned ultimately that in some form the transatlantic alliance will survive. However, I don't think it will continue in the way it has been in the last few years.
While Europe goes through these struggles, there are those who see this, Jamie, as the Asian century, in particularly the rise of China. Do you see that also almost inevitable? As Europe and America go through this difficult period, the rise of China gets even more accelerated. And what does that mean for this notion of an Asian century? Is it just about China? Is it also about middle powers like India? And therefore could lead to new alliances emerging outside traditional alliances?
I think so. I think, say what you may about President Trump, what he does do and what he has done is actually force people to have difficult conversations within themselves as organizations, as groupings, as allies, and that's exactly what's happening and should happen with Europe. And I think that's something that we should do in Asia as well. Maybe preemptively, we need to have conversations about ASEAN within Southeast Asia. We need to talk about India, exactly as you say, and work with whomever we can in this new order. And I think that is, I think, ultimately the best thing that can come out of it. Interestingly enough, one of the things that we sort of sense from the last couple of days is how little China has featured in the conversations here in Davos.
Why is that? Why is that? That's an interesting point you raised. Why? I mean, is it again? I mean, is it geography again? Because you're located in Europe and there's this transatlantic war going on, China is on the sidelines just watching it play out.
Yeah. Well, one reason obviously is, exactly as he always does, President Trump sucks a lot of oxygen out of the room in terms of discussions. Yes. And obviously the issues that were going to be discussed were already decided upon quite early. It was Greenland, it was the Board of Peace, etc., etc.
Vice Premier He Lifang is not quite as entertaining.
And he never will be, and nor should he be, right? I think though, I mean, what has happened is that we probably taken that off the table in terms of the real acute issues that need to be spoken about. But again, I think that is the larger issue of the day for Asia and for the US and China as well.
What does that mean though for Asia? I mean, increasing Chinese dominance, is that something to be celebrated, or do you believe there are warning signals there as well?
No, I think as far as China goes, the way that we see it, it is kind of an inevitability that they will continue to grow economic strength. Obviously, they have challenges now, but I think they'll get away at some point in time. What that means for Southeast Asia, what that means for Singapore as countries, yes, we will have to continue to manage the relationship as best as we can between the two main powers. It's going to get more difficult. I can foresee that, but it's unavoidable. And I think the same for all Southeast Asia as well.
You know, interestingly, even as we speak, European Union leaders are heading out to India and hoping to sign the mother of all deals. The EU delegates are our guests of honor at India's Republic Day. Do you see that also as the pattern, that everyone is now hedging their bets, de-risking from the United States and looking for other newer markets with whom they can do more business?
That is absolutely what's happening. I'm actually coming also to Delhi a few days afterwards to attend an EU-India forum. I'm very much looking forward to it. It's clear that all middle powers, all powers that are not the two great superpowers, are trying to find a way, trying to look for alternatives, ways to hedge against the great superpowers. Nobody really wants to be a client state, either of the United States or of China. Traditionally, Singapore has possibly been the best at this. Under the founding leader, Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore, you know much better than me, but Singapore always was able to play this balance. They were friends with China, big investors in China, obviously a very large Chinese diaspora in Singapore, but always one of the closest allies militarily, closest friends to America. I personally believe that that kind of balancing is becoming more and more uncomfortable, if not impossible. And I think that certainly on both sides, from the Chinese side and from the United States side, they are pressuring other countries to choose. Are you with us or are you on that side?
Are you saying that the world has to choose between the US and China at the moment? It's not possible to have good relations with China and the United States? Is this the sort of new battle in a way? We're already seeing it playing out in AI, for example, between the Chinese and the Americans. Are you saying that's going to be in every sphere of life?
I believe that we're already in a situation where Beijing is pressuring countries to, you're either on our side or you're with the Americans, and the same from the United States. We're seeing increasing hardening on both sides of you're in our camp or you're in their camp, and it is falling, roughly into authoritarian states versus democratic states. Now, of course, as you know much better than me, India has traditionally been quite clever about playing a middle way, a non-aligned position. But I think it will be, and for India maybe that's still a feasible thing in the new Cold War that we're in, but I think it'll become increasingly uncomfortable, and especially for powers smaller than India.
Interesting. Singapore still going to hedge its bets, still play the balancing role, or has Singapore also got to realign itself, and as have countries in Southeast Asia?
The these questions are asked of the Singapore leaders almost every single time they're met with the media, right? And their answers are quite, predictable, and it's the same. It's not as if we seek to be overtly balancing all the time. I think Singapore, and the way the Singapore government does it, is it truly does believe that it is still possible to have good relations with both sides. Now, obviously, as Jamil said, it is not necessarily going to get any easier. In fact, it will get harder. And I think the answer to that, as most other middle powers will find, and smaller countries especially, is to actually, that's where the benefit of alliances and sort of smaller groupings of like-minded countries will come about as well, because, precisely because you've got two big powers, and precisely because
you see stronger regional groupings emerging in the next few years.
Not just emerging, but strengthening too. So, for example, ASEAN, I mean,
Make ASEAN great again.
Yeah.
Great for the first time.
But, while we look at this sort of new world order, there was a word which was thrown at me. This is a new world disorder. And the turbulence is going to last for a few years, because Donald Trump's not going anywhere, at least not for the next 3 years. In a sense, therefore, if we were to meet in Davos a year from now, do you believe the world will be even more unsettled than it is today? Or do you believe eventually countries will recognize the need for a kind of cooperative competition, if I may call it that?
No, I think it's going to get more disordered. I think we're going to see more conflicts. We're going to see more frictions. And I think, to me, the greatest risk right now is a aggressive move by Xi Jinping, by China, militarily, particularly on Taiwan, obviously.
You see that happening?
I'm saying that's a rising risk. I'm not predicting it. Never good to predict
Yes,
things.
yes.
I'll see you next year when
Yes.
Taiwan is part of China.
Yes.
No, I think that, but I think that risk is rising all the time, especially as America abrogates its responsibilities, abrogates the multilateral world order that it created, that it built, and is now helping to tear down. I think that emboldens Xi Jinping, and I believe that the likelihood of armed conflict between China and Taiwan, China and its neighbors, is rising all the time, especially as Jamie alluded to the economic troubles that China is having. I myself spent 22 years as a journalist in China, and particularly a financial journalist, and what I see in the Chinese economy is really serious cracks and fissures that are starting to open up, particularly around bad debt related to the real estate sector. So I think that is a really serious problem. The more the economic situation deteriorates at home, the more attractive foreign adventurism becomes to Xi Jinping.
Jimmy? So is that a real possibility, Chinese adventurism in Taiwan?
I don't think so, and therefore I think as a counter to what Jamil just said, I think rather than an outright period of disorder, I would probably see it myself as more continued unpredictability. I mean, we have lived through a period of quite clear predictability, as I said earlier. I think we're just getting used to the fact that things are no longer going to be the same, but I don't know whether we'll get into straight out disorder. It's quite clear now, at least, I hope that at least as it relates to the US and China, both sides have an interest in some degree of stability, at least for this coming year. They've got larger fish to fry, larger economic issues to deal with. I don't think 2026 is going to be that acute.
So let's make a bet. January
Okay.
2028. Will there have been a conflict over Taiwan?
28 or 27?
No, I'm saying 2 years. I'm
years
giving myself 2 years.
You're
Take
giving-
that bet.
But you say
Are you saying yes?
I'm saying yes.
20,
January 2028. Conflict over Taiwan before then. If there is, I'll give you 100 euros. If there isn't, I'll give you 100 euros. If there is, you have to
All
give
right.
me.
Just one heck of
Of it, no.
Okay.
And I'll see you here in 2 years' time.
2 years' time, right.
Okay.
The worst thing we can do in the times that we live in is predict anything that will happen in the future, in the Trumpian
Especially with
future.
the time on it.
And Europe itself, will Europe be more settled, or will Europe also be convulsed by what we are seeing within Europe as well? The kind of debates over immigration, over liberal, so-called liberal values versus right-wing. Are those debates going to get more shrill and polarized in the next couple of years?
I think they will, but as I was alluding to earlier, I'm actually optimistic that the crisis that Donald Trump represents, the crisis that is happening all around the world, will lead to Europe getting over its petty squabbles amongst themselves and create more impetus for ever greater union within Europe itself, so that Europe can potentially play this balancing role, this third pole, as we hear many talk about, balancing between the great forces of the United States and China.
Fascinating to have both of you here today, because I think it sums up what the World Economic Forum has been, a battle over ideas. The spirit of dialogue was the overarching theme. It's seen its fair share of conflict. But the very fact that we can have these conversations, I think, is a positive. And hopefully these conversations eventually will lead to a more meaningful dialogue, and the world will be a better place for it, because it's only through dialogue that we can achieve something substantive. Great to have journalists from different parts of the world joining me here on this Davos brainstorm. Thank you both very much. And thank you to the viewers who've been watching us all these days, because it is important to have this view from Davos of the world around us, the new world disorder, as I call it. Thanks very much for watching.